The autumn market at Coldbrook Bridge was the only place where two worlds collided without bloodshed. Humans from Millhaven spread their wares on wooden tables while traders from the Northern Territories kept to the shadows beneath ancient oaks. An uneasy truce held here, bound by commerce and mutual need. Saren adjusted the strap of her satchel, heavy with leather bindings and brass clasps for Master Hadwin's shop. She preferred the quiet of the bindery, the smell of parchment and glue, the satisfying weight of a newly bound volume in her hands. Markets made her nervous. Too many people pressed too close together, their emotions bleeding through the air like spilled ink. Today felt different. Wrong, somehow. A tension thrummed beneath the ordinary chaos of haggling merchants and bleeding livestock. She noticed the wolves first. Not wolves exactly. People who moved like wolves. They emerged from the tree line in a loose formation, their clothing fine but foreign, their eyes holding a sharpness that made Saren's breath catch. The crowd parted for them instinctively, conversations dying mid-sentence. At the center of the group walked a man who could only be their leader. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his collar, and eyes the color of a winter storm. His face was carved from granite, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. He surveyed the market with the casual assessment of a predator who knew nothing here could threaten him. Saren found herself staring, and quickly looked away, her cheeks warming. That's when she noticed the child. A small girl walked beside the wolf lord, her hand swallowed by his massive palm. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with the same dark hair as her father, but eyes that seemed too large for her pale face. Something about her stillness, her silence, tugged at Saren's chest. The child looked hollow, like a lantern with no flame inside. Saren knew that look. She had worn it herself after her mother died. That terrible emptiness that swallowed everything, even the will to speak. Without thinking, Saren took a step closer, and the little girl's head turned, those enormous eyes finding Saren across the crowded market with unsettling precision. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the child released her father's hand and walked directly toward Saren, weaving between startled merchants and frozen guards as if they didn't exist. "Lady Wren," someone called sharply, but the girl didn't stop. She walked until she stood directly before Saren, barely reaching her hip in height. Those dark eyes studied Saren's face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then small fingers reached out and grabbed the sleeve of Saren's worn dress. The entire market went silent. Saren felt rather than saw the wolves go rigid. Hands moved to weapons. The crowd drew back as if expecting violence to erupt. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The wolf lord had gone absolutely still, his gray eyes fixed on the place where his daughter's fingers clutched Saren's sleeve. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in his gaze, something raw and desperate that he quickly smothered. "Release her at once." A tall man with silver threading his temples stepped forward, his voice sharp with authority. "The child is unwell. She doesn't know what she's doing." The little girl's grip tightened. Saren looked down at the small hand clutching her sleeve, then at the pale face turned up toward hers. The child hadn't made a sound, but Saren could feel something emanating from her. A loneliness so vast it made her own heart ache in response. Everyone expected her to pull away, to apologize and flee before the wolves' displeasure fell upon her. That would be the sensible thing, the safe thing. Instead, Saren knelt down until she was eye level with the little girl. Slowly, deliberately, she tugged back on her own sleeve, a gentle pressure that said, "I see you. I'm not going anywhere." The child's eyes widened. For the first time, something like life flickered in those hollow depths. "What is your name?" Saren asked softly. The girl didn't answer. Of course she didn't. Those eyes said she hadn't spoken in a very long time. "My name is Saren," she continued anyway, keeping her voice gentle. "It means star. My mother used to say I was born under a sky full of them." The silver-templed man strode forward. "This is an outrage. Remove this human immediately." But the wolf lord raised one hand, and the man fell silent instantly. Those storm-gray eyes hadn't left Saren's face, watching her interaction with his daughter with an expression she couldn't decipher. "You do not fear her," he said. His voice was deep, accented with the rolling cadence of the Northern Territories. "It wasn't a question. Should I?" Saren asked, still kneeling beside the child. "Most humans fear what they don't understand." Saren thought of the gift she kept hidden, the strange ability to absorb others' pain through her skin. The secret that would see her burned as a witch if anyone discovered it. Perhaps I understand more than most, she said quietly. The Wolf Lord studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in that granite facade. She hasn't touched anyone willingly in 8 months, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not since her mother died. The words hit Saren like a physical blow. She looked at the child, at the small fingers still gripping her sleeve, and felt tears prick her eyes. I'm sorry, she said, and she meant it with her whole heart. I know what it is to lose a mother. The world becomes very quiet, doesn't it? The little girl, Ren, stared at her. And then, so slowly that Saren almost missed it, she nodded. My lord, the silver-templed man interrupted, his voice tight with disapproval. We cannot allow this human to silence Aldrich. The Wolf Lord's tone brooked no argument. He approached until he stood over Saren, close enough that she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. What is your name, Saren? Saren Ashford. Saren. He spoke her name like he was tasting it. I am Kaelin, Alpha of the Thornwood Pack. And you have just done something no one has managed in 8 months. His gaze dropped to his daughter, and Saren saw his throat work as he swallowed. You made her reach out. Before Saren could respond, Ren's other hand came up and grabbed Saren's finger, holding on with surprising strength. She won't let you go now, Kaelin said. There was something almost like wonder in his voice. She has chosen you. Chosen me for what? Kaelin's eyes met hers, and Saren felt the weight of his gaze like a physical pressure against her skin. You will come with us to Thornwood. You will stay until my daughter releases you willingly. He paused, and something dark and unreadable passed across his features. However long that takes. I can't just leave, Saren protested. I have responsibilities, a life. Your life is now bound to hers. Kaelin's voice softened, just slightly. I am not asking, Saren Ashford. But I am not without gratitude. You will be treated as an honored guest, not a prisoner. My word is Alpha. Saren looked down at the small hand clutching hers, at the flicker of desperate hope in Ren's dark eyes. She thought of Master Hadwin, who would be furious. She thought of her small room above the bindery, her quiet life, everything familiar and safe. Then she thought of herself at 5 years old, drowning in grief, with no one who understood. All right, she heard herself say. I'll come. Ren's fingers tightened around hers, and for the first time in many months, the ghost of a smile crossed the child's pale face. Saren had no way of knowing it then, but in that moment, with those simple words, she had sealed her fate to something far greater and more dangerous than she could possibly imagine. The journey into Thornwood territory took 3 days. Saren rode a gentle mare provided by Kaelin's guards, though, provided, felt generous for something she had no choice but to accept. Ren rode with her father at the front of the column, but every time they stopped to rest, the child would seek out Saren with single-minded determination. She spoke no words, but her meaning was clear. Stay close. Saren found she didn't mind. There was something strangely comforting about Ren's silent presence, about the small hand that would find hers whenever they walked together. The child's loneliness echoed her own in ways she couldn't quite articulate. You have a gift with her. Saren startled at the voice. One of the female wolves had fallen into step beside her mare, moving with the liquid grace that marked all of Kaelin's people. Her hair was copper bright, her eyes a warm amber. I don't know about a gift, Saren replied carefully. I just know what it's like to lose someone. The woman's expression softened. I'm Mira. I was the Luna's handmaiden before. She trailed off, her gaze dropping. Before, the Luna was Ren's mother? Mira nodded. Lady Alara. She was the heart of our pack. When the sickness took her, something in Ren broke. She stopped speaking, stopped eating for weeks. The Alpha nearly lost both of them. Saren absorbed this information, her heart aching for the child and, unexpectedly, for Kaelin. She had seen the way he looked at his daughter, the desperate love buried beneath his stern exterior. Lord Aldrich thinks you've bewitched her, Mira added quietly. Be careful around him. He has the Alpha's ear, and he doesn't trust humans. Has he suggested what manner of witch could bewitch a wolf child with nothing but kindness? Saren asked dryly. Mira's lips twitched. I think I like you, Saren Ashford. By the second night, they had passed beyond any territory Saren recognized. The forests here were ancient and untamed, filled with shadows that seemed to breathe. The wolves moved through them like they were coming home, their shoulders relaxing and their steps growing lighter. Saren felt the opposite. Every mile took her farther from everything she knew, deeper into a world where she was prey surrounded by predators. But whenever fear threatened to overwhelm her, Ren would appear at her side, those dark eyes looking up at her with quiet trust. On the third morning, they crested a ridge, and Saren's breath caught in her throat. Thornwood Keep rose from the heart of the valley below, a sprawling fortress of dark stone and ancient timber. It looked less like a castle and more like something that had grown from the earth itself, towers reaching toward the sky like petrified trees. Smoke curled from dozens of chimneys, and even from this distance, Saren could see people moving through the courtyards. "Welcome to Thornwood," Kalen said, his voice carrying easily to where she sat. Their eyes met briefly, and something unreadable flickered in his gaze before he turned away. The reception at the gates was less welcoming than Saren had hoped. Word of her arrival had clearly preceded them. Wolves lined the courtyard, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Whispers followed her like shadows as she dismounted and took Ren's offered hand. "A human," someone muttered. "The Alpha has brought a human into the keep. The child chose her," another voice responded. "You know what that could mean. Superstitious nonsense." Lord Aldrich materialized beside Kalen, his voice pitched low but still audible to Saren's ears. "My lord, I must counsel against this course. The pack will not accept a human in our midst, especially not one with such unexplained influence over your daughter." "My daughter reached out for the first time in 8 months," Kalen responded, his tone flat. "I would ally with demons themselves if it meant bringing her back. And if this woman is something worse than a demon?" Kalen's head turned slowly, and even from a distance, Saren could see Aldrich flinch at whatever he saw in his Alpha's eyes. "Then I will deal with her myself. But until then, she is my guest, and she will be treated accordingly." "Is that understood?" Aldrich's jaw tightened, but he bowed. "As you command, my lord." A room had been prepared for Saren in the east wing, comfortable but isolated from the main household. The message was clear: guest, but not family; welcome, but not trusted. She didn't care about the room. What concerned her was Ren. The child had been taken to the nursery by servants the moment they arrived, her small fingers pried from Saren's hand despite her silent protests. Saren had watched her go, had seen the way Ren's shoulders hunched and her steps dragged, and felt something twist painfully in her chest. That night, unable to sleep, Saren wandered the corridors until she found herself outside the nursery door. She told herself she just wanted to check, to make sure the child was resting peacefully. What she found made her blood run cold. Ren lay in her small bed, trembling violently, her skin pale as moonlight and sheened with sweat. Her breathing came in shallow, rapid gasps, and her small hands clutched the blankets with white-knuckled desperation. But it was what Saren felt that truly horrified her. The moment she stepped into the room, her gift flared to life unbidden. Pain crashed into her like a wave, pain so vast and dark it nearly drove her to her knees. Not physical pain, something deeper, something that felt like a soul slowly being devoured. "Oh gods," Saren breathed, rushing to the bedside. "What's happening to you?" Ren's eyes opened, finding Saren's face in the darkness. They were glassy with fever, but beneath the haze, Saren saw something that made her heart stop. The child's eyes flickered gold for just an instant, before fading back to their usual dark. And in that flicker, Saren felt something else emanating from the little girl. A presence. A power that was fighting desperately to break free and failing. Ren's wolf, Saren realized with dawning horror. Her wolf is trapped inside her, and it's killing them both. Saren didn't think. She acted. Her hands found Ren's face, cradling those fever-hot cheeks, and she did something she had never done voluntarily in her entire life. She opened herself completely to her gift. The pain hit her like a thunderbolt. She gasped, her vision swimming, as Ren's agony poured into her through her palms. It was beyond anything she had ever experienced. A maelstrom of grief and fear and something else. Something wild and primal that thrashed like a caged animal. Saren could see it now, not with her eyes but with something deeper. A silver wolf, small and perfect, trapped behind walls of ice inside Ren's soul. The child's grief had frozen her wolf in place, cutting her off from the very essence of what she was. and the separation was slowly killing them both. I see you, Saren whispered to the trapped creature. I see you, and I'm going to help. She poured everything she had into her gift, not just absorbing the pain but pushing warmth back through the connection. She imagined sunlight melting ice, imagined spring thawing a frozen lake. She thought of her mother's voice, her mother's hands, all the love she had lost and still carried in her heart. Let her go, she pleaded with the ice. Please, let her go. The walls began to crack, a howl built in the night air, high and pure and achingly young. Saren dimly registered that it was coming from Ren, the first sound the child had made since her mother's death, but she couldn't focus on that. Couldn't focus on anything except the battle raging beneath her hands. The door burst open behind her. What are you doing to my daughter? Kaylin's voice was thunder and fury. Hands grabbed Saren's shoulders, trying to tear her away. Don't, she screamed. If you break the connection now, you'll kill her. Kaylin froze. Her wolf is trapped. Saren gasped, sweat dripping down her face, her arms trembling with effort. Her grief locked it away, and it's been dying ever since. I can free it. I can save her. But you have to let me finish. For an endless moment, Kaylin's hands remained on her shoulders, his claws partially extended, ready to rip her away from his child. She could feel his terror, his desperate love, his agonizing uncertainty. Then his hands fell away. Save her, he said hoarsely. Whatever you are, whatever this costs, save her. Saren turned back to Ren and dove deeper into her gift than she had ever gone before. The ice shattered. Light exploded behind Saren's eyes as Ren's wolf burst free, flooding through the child's small body in a rush of silver and moonlight. The little girl arched off the bed, her howl transforming from pain to joy, and for one brilliant instant, Saren felt their souls brush against each other. Recognition, gratitude, and something else. Something that reached past Ren and toward a presence Saren hadn't noticed. A massive golden wolf spirit that had been watching from the shadows of the room. Kaylin's wolf. The moment their essences touched, the world exploded into sensation. Saren felt a cord of light snap into place between her soul and the golden wolf, between her and Kaylin, binding them together with a force that stole her breath. She heard him gasp behind her, heard his knees hit the floor, but she couldn't turn to look because she was burning from the inside out. Mate, something ancient whispered in her mind. Mine. The word didn't come from Kaylin. It came from his wolf, from the primal creature that had claimed her soul without permission or warning. And then Saren felt teeth sink into her shoulder. She didn't remember Kaylin moving, didn't remember anything except the sudden sharp pain and the wave of heat that followed it, spreading through her veins like wildfire. His mouth was on her neck, his arms locked around her waist, and some part of her knew she should be fighting, should be screaming. Instead, she melted into him as darkness claimed the edges of her vision. The last thing she heard before consciousness fled was Kaylin's voice, broken and horrified. What have I done? When Saren woke, gray morning light filtered through unfamiliar windows, and she was alone. Her shoulder throbbed where memory said teeth had pierced skin. She reached up with trembling fingers and felt the wound, ragged and tender, already half-healed in a way that should have been impossible. But that wasn't what made her stomach drop. Something was different inside her. Something fundamental had shifted in the core of her being. She could feel a presence at the edge of her consciousness, golden and vast, pacing like a caged beast. She could feel Kaylin somewhere in this fortress, feel his guilt and his fear and his desperate, unwanted desire. She could feel everything. The door opened, and an elderly woman entered, her face grave. So, you're awake. What happened to me? Saren's voice came out as a cracked whisper. The woman, a healer by the herbs in her basket, sat heavily in the chair beside the bed. I am Brenna, the pack's elder healer, and I must tell you difficult truths. She paused, her ancient eyes full of pity. The Alpha bit you, claimed me? Among our kind? A claiming bite creates a mate bond. It is sacred, permanent. Brenna's voice was heavy with sorrow. It should also be impossible for a human to survive. The transformation it triggers would tear your body apart. Saren's hand flew to her shoulder. Transformation? The Alpha's essence is inside you now, trying to make you like us. Your human body is fighting it. Brenna leaned forward, her voice heavy with terrible certainty. Child, I have lived 200 years. I have seen this twice before. Both times, the human died, within a fortnight, destroyed by a change they could not complete. The room seemed to spin around Saren. The Alpha has locked himself in his chambers, Brenna continued. He is half mad with guilt and grief. He never meant to claim you. His wolf acted on instinct when your souls touched through the child, but intention changes nothing. She reached out and took Saren's cold hand. I am sorry, child. I am so deeply sorry, but unless we find a way to complete your transformation, his bite will kill you. Saren stared at her shoulder, at the mark that had bound her to a man she barely knew, and felt her world crumble into ashes. The bond she didn't want and couldn't control pulsed with Kaylin's anguish, echoing her own. And somewhere deep inside her, something that wasn't entirely human anymore, opened its eyes and began to howl. 3 days passed in a haze of fever and fractured dreams. Saren drifted in and out of consciousness, her body racked by waves of pain as the change fought to take hold. Through it all, she felt Kaylin's presence at the edge of her awareness, a constant golden warmth that both comforted and terrified her. He never came to see her, but she knew he hadn't slept, knew he paced his chambers like a caged animal, knew his guilt was eating him alive. The bond told her everything, whether she wanted to know or not. On the 4th morning, Saren woke to find small fingers wrapped around her hand. Ren sat beside her bed, those dark eyes bright with something that hadn't been there before. Life. The child fairly glowed with it, her cheeks pink, and her silver wolf spirit shimmering just beneath the surface of her skin. You're better, Saren whispered, her voice raw from disuse. Ren nodded solemnly. Then, for the first time since they had met, she spoke. You saved me. The words were rusty, unpracticed, but perfectly clear. Now I'll save you. Tears spilled down Saren's cheeks before she could stop them. Oh, little one, Papa is scared, Ren continued, her small face grave. His wolf wants to be with you, but he won't let it. He thinks he's a monster. Saren thought of the bite on her shoulder, of the bond thrumming between them, of the man who had claimed her without meaning to. He's not a monster, she said quietly. He's just afraid of hurting me more than he already has. Will you tell him that? Before Saren could answer, the door opened, and Mira slipped inside, her copper hair disheveled and her amber eyes wide with urgency. You need to leave, she said without preamble. Now, while you still can. Saren struggled to sit up, wincing as her shoulder throbbed. What's happening? Lord Aldrich has called a council meeting. He's demanding the Alpha reject the bond before it completes. Mira's voice shook. He's claiming you're a witch who has bewitched both the child and the Alpha. Half the pack believes him. Can the bond be rejected? Mira's silence was answer enough. It would kill her, Ren said flatly. And Papa? The bond is already too strong. Mira knelt before the child, her expression softening. That's why we need to get Saren away from here, little one. If she's not present, Aldrich can't force the Alpha's hand. Where would I even go? Saren asked. I'm days from Millhaven, and I can barely walk. There's a healer in the eastern mountains, Mira said. An ancient one, older than the pack itself. She might know how to help you survive the transformation without. She broke off, glancing at Ren. Without what? Without completing the mate bond. Mira's eyes held apology. It's the only way to save your life and free the Alpha from this impossible situation. Saren absorbed this information, something hollow opening in her chest. Free the Alpha, as if she were a burden he needed to shed. And perhaps she was. She was human, foreign, dying. What Alpha King needed a mate like that? All right, she said quietly. I'll go. No. Ren's grip on her hand tightened painfully. You can't leave. You're supposed to stay. You're supposed to be, Ren. Saren cupped the child's face gently. I have to. Your father needs to lead his pack, and he can't do that while Aldrich is using me against him. This is the only way. But who will hold my hand? The question broke something inside Saren's heart. Your father will. She pressed a kiss to Ren's forehead. And you have your wolf now. You're never truly alone anymore. They left at dusk, slipping through a servant's passage that Mira knew from her years serving the former Luna. Saren was wrapped in a heavy traveling cloak, her legs still unsteady, but growing stronger with each step. She told herself not to look back. She looked back anyway. Kaylin stood in a high window of the keep, his silhouette unmistakable against the candlelit interior. Even from this distance, Saren could feel his gaze on her, could feel the howl building in his chest that he refused to release. Their connection pulsed with his anguish, his fury, his desperate want, and beneath it all, she felt his goodbye. He was letting her go because he thought it would save her. He was tearing out his own heart because he believed it was the right thing to do. Saren turned away and walked into the darkness of the forest, leaving Thornwood Keep and its broken alpha behind. She didn't see Aldrich watching from the shadows below, a cold smile spreading across his face as she disappeared among the trees. The dreams came every night. In them, Kaelin came to her in the darkness, his hands gentle on her face, his voice rough with words she couldn't quite understand. He would hold her, as if she were something precious, something sacred, and whisper against her throat in that rolling accent that made her shiver. "Come back to me," he would say. "I cannot breathe without you." Saren would wake gasping, her body aching with need, the bond screaming for the connection it had been denied. Each morning felt worse than the last, her strength fading even as the healer's cabin in the eastern mountains drew closer. Mira had left her at the edge of the territory with supplies, a map, and a heavy purse of coins. "The healer's name is Orla," she had said. "Tell her the daughter of the moon sent you. She'll understand." Now, 5 days into her journey alone, Saren was beginning to doubt she would reach the mountains at all. The transformation was accelerating. She could feel it in her bones, in the way her senses sharpened without warning, in the flashes of gold that sometimes overtook her vision. Her shoulder burned constantly, the claiming mark pulsing in time with a heartbeat that wasn't entirely her own. "You're fighting it," she told herself, as she stumbled along a forest path. Stop fighting it, but she didn't know how to stop. Her body wanted to change, her mind was terrified of what she might become, and caught between the two, she was slowly being torn apart. On the 6th night, huddled in a shallow cave to escape the rain, Saren felt something shift in their connection. Danger. No danger to herself. Danger to Ren. The sensation hit her like a blow to the chest. She saw flashes through the bond. Fragments of images that didn't make sense. Ren's terrified face. Aldrich's cold smile. A silver blade raised in darkness. "No," Saren gasped. "No. No. No." She tried to push deeper into the connection, tried to see more, but the distance was too great. All she could feel was Ren's fear, Kaelin's rage, and beneath it all, a terrible sense of betrayal. Aldrich had done something unforgivable. Saren was on her feet before she consciously decided to move. Her body screamed in protest, her half-formed wolf howling inside her chest, but she didn't care. Ren was in danger, Kaelin was in danger. Nothing else mattered. She ran, the forest blurred around her, branches tearing at her cloak, roots reaching up to trip her feet. She fell a dozen times, picked herself up a dozen more. The bond pulled her like a compass needle, always pointing back toward Thornwood Keep. By dawn, she had covered more ground than should have been possible for a human. By noon, she collapsed at the edge of a stream, her vision swimming and her heart thundering in her ears. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up. Get up. Get up." But her body had finally reached its limit. The transformation roared through her, more violent than ever before, and Saren screamed as her bones began to crack and reform. This was it. She was going to die here, alone in the wilderness, while the people she loved faced whatever horror Aldrich had unleashed. Through the agony, she heard hoofbeats approaching. "There she is," a voice called. "The Alpha's witch, just as Lord Aldrich said we'd find her." Rough hands grabbed her arms, hauling her upright. Through pain-blurred vision, Saren saw uniformed men, but not wolves. Humans. Soldiers bearing the crest of the Southern King. "How fortunate," a cultured voice said, and Saren's heart seized as a familiar figure stepped into view. Not Aldrich. Someone worse. The King's apothecary, a thin man with pale eyes and a smile like a wound, studied her with clinical interest. "Lord Aldrich sent word that the wolves were harboring a human woman of unusual abilities," he said. "A woman who could absorb pain with her touch and survive a claiming bite. Do you have any idea how valuable that makes you?" Saren tried to speak, but the transformation had stolen her voice along with her strength. "Take her to the camp," the apothecary ordered. "Carefully, she's no use to me dead." He leaned closer, his breath sour against her face. "We're going to learn all your secrets," little witch. And then we're going to use them to destroy every wolf in the northern territories." As the soldiers dragged her away, Saren felt the bond with Kaelin flare with desperate intensity. He knew, he felt her terror, her capture, her pain. But he was miles away, and Aldrich's betrayal had left him fighting for his pack's survival. No one was coming to save her. They kept her in a cage. Iron bars, cold stone floor, darkness relieved only by the flickering torches in the corridor beyond. Saren had lost track of time, lost track of everything except the pain and the bond. The apothecary, who called himself Master Corvin, visited her daily. He drew her blood, with silver needles that burned like fire. He measured and catalogued, and took meticulous notes in a leather journal. All while asking questions she refused to answer. How did you survive the claiming bite? Silence. What is the source of your ability? Silence. How do we replicate your immunity to the transformation? Silence. Each refusal earned her another day without food, another night of the soldier's casual cruelty. But Saren had discovered something in her captivity, something that kept her sane when everything else had crumbled. She could feel Kaelin searching for her. The link between them showed her everything. Him tearing through the countryside, his wolf barely contained beneath his skin. She felt his pack running with him, heard the distant echoes of howls in the night. Aldrich's coup had failed, the traitor had fled into the southern kingdom, rather than face the Alpha's justice. Kaelin had survived, and now he was hunting. "He'll never find you," Master Corvin said on the 7th day, as if reading her thoughts. "We're beyond the boundaries of wolf territory, protected by the king's army. Your Alpha is walking into a trap." Saren's head snapped up. "What trap?" Corvin's smile was poison. "Lord Aldrich may have failed to seize control of the pack, but he succeeded in something far more valuable. He gave us the location of every wolf stronghold in the north. When your Alpha comes for you, and he will, the king's forces will be waiting." Horror flooded through Saren. "You're using me as bait. You're the perfect lure." Corvin spread his hands. "Acclaimed mate, bound by a bond the wolves consider sacred. Kaelin cannot ignore your call any more than he could stop his own heart from beating. He'll come, and when he does, we'll capture him. The Alpha King of Thornwood, the most powerful wolf the North has seen in living memory. Imagine what we could learn from studying him." Saren thought of Kaelin in a cage like hers. Thought of silver needles piercing his skin. Thought of his proud spirit broken by captivity and cruelty. "I'll die first," she said. "If I'm dead, the bond dies with me. He'll have no reason to come." Corvin laughed. "Oh, my dear. That's not how claiming bonds work at all. If you die, he'll come anyway, driven mad by grief. And a grief-maddened Alpha is even easier to catch than a determined one." He left her alone with that terrible knowledge. That night, Saren lay on the cold stone and reached deep into herself, deeper than she had ever gone before, not to her gift this time, but to the bond itself, to the golden thread that connected her soul to Kaelin's. She had been fighting it since the moment it formed, fearing it, resenting it. But now, with nothing left to lose, she finally stopped running. The bond blazed to life, like a sun rising inside her chest. Kaelin's presence flooded through her, overwhelming in its intensity. She felt his exhaustion, his fury, his desperate love, and beneath it all, she felt his wolf, golden and enormous, pacing at the edges of his control. "Don't come." She pushed through their connection with everything she had. "It's a trap. They'll capture you." For a moment, there was only silence. Then his voice, rough and immediate in her mind. The first true communication they had shared. "You are my mate. My heart runs in your chest. Do you truly believe I could abandon you? They'll kill you. Then we die together." A pause, heavy with emotion. "I should have come sooner. I should never have let you leave. Forgive me, Saren." Tears streamed down her face. "There's nothing to forgive. There is everything to forgive. But I will spend the rest of my life earning your pardon." His presence pulsed with fierce determination. "Hold on, my heart. I am coming for you." The connection faded, leaving Saren alone in her cell with the echo of his promise. 2 days later, the wolves came. They struck at midnight, a coordinated assault that overwhelmed the camp's defenses in minutes. Saren heard screaming, heard howls, heard the clash of steel, and the wet sounds of violence. Then her cell door exploded inward, Torn from its hinges by a force beyond human strength, Kalen stood in the ruins. Blood splattered across his chest, his eyes blazing gold. Behind him, chaos reigned, as wolves in both forms tore through the king's soldiers. Saren. Her name was a prayer on his lips. He crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands impossibly gentle as they cupped her face. She was filthy, starving, half dead from the incomplete transformation. But he looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "You came," she whispered. "I will always come." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Can you walk?" "I don't know." "Then I carry you." He lifted her, as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. She felt his wolf howling with triumph, with possession, with a love so fierce it burned. They made it 3 steps before Corvin appeared in the doorway, a crossbow in his hands. "How touching," the apothecary said. The beast and his witch, reunited at last. The bolt was silver-tipped. Saren saw it glinting in the torchlight. "Put her down, Alpha King, or I'll shoot her right through your arms." Kalen went very still. She felt him calculating, felt his wolf snarling with rage. "If you harm her," he said quietly, "there is no force on earth that will prevent me from tearing your heart from your chest." Brave words from a man holding his greatest weakness. Corvin's finger tightened on the trigger. "But I think you'll find—" He never finished the sentence. Saren moved on pure instinct, her hand shooting out toward the crossbow. The gift she had suppressed her whole life, the power to absorb and redirect pain, blazed through her with devastating force. She didn't just absorb Corvin's intended violence. She threw it back at him. The crossbow shattered. Corvin screamed as his arm bent at an impossible angle. And Saren, burning with power she had never known she possessed, felt the last barrier inside her finally break. The transformation took her like a wave. Saren had expected agony. She had steeled herself for the bone-breaking, muscle-tearing horror that Brenna had described. Instead, she felt freedom. Her body dissolved into light and reformed as something new. 4 paws where hands and feet had been. Silver-white fur rippling across muscles that had never existed before. A tail, ears that swiveled toward sound. A nose that could smell everything, the blood and sweat and fear, the smoke from dying fires, and beneath it all, the warm cedar scent that was Kalen. She lifted her head and howled. The sound shattered the night, pure and piercing and triumphant. Around her, the battle paused as every wolf, friend and foe alike, turned toward the impossible sight. A human woman, newly transformed, standing in the ruins of a prison camp with moonlight blazing in her eyes that glowed gold now, touched by the Alpha's essence that had remade her from within. Kalen shifted beside her, his wolf form massive and dark as shadow. His muzzle touched hers gently, and through their bond, she felt his wonder, his joy, his overwhelming love. "You're beautiful," he said through their connection. "I knew you would be beautiful." They ran. Side by side, they tore through the remnants of the king's forces, silver and shadow moving as one. Saren had never known such power, such speed, and such perfect synchronization with another being. Every move Kalen made, she anticipated. Every thought he had, she felt. They were 2 halves of a single soul, finally united. By dawn, the battle was won. The wolf pack gathered in a clearing as the sun rose over the mountains, their forms shifting from wolf to human and back again. Saren stood among them, human once more, wrapped in a cloak someone had pressed into her hands. She should have been exhausted. Instead, she felt more alive than she ever had before. "You did it," Mira said, appearing at her side with tears streaming down her face. "You actually did it. A full transformation, and you survived. I had incentive." Saren's eyes found Kalen across the clearing, where he was speaking with his war council. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, and the smile that crossed his face stole her breath. "He's different," Mira observed. "I've known him for 20 years, and I've never seen him look like that, like he finally has something to live for." Saren thought of the hollow-eyed man she had first seen at Coldbrook Bridge, the Alpha who had lost his mate and nearly lost his daughter. She thought of his guilt after the claiming, his determination to let her go even though it was killing him. "We've both been given a second chance," she said quietly. "I don't intend to waste it." The celebration that night was unlike anything Saren had ever experienced. Bonfires blazed throughout Thornwood Keep. Music echoed off the ancient stones. Wolves danced and feasted and howled at the rising moon, celebrating their alpha's victory and the miracle of his new mate. Saren stood at the edge of it all, still adjusting to the sensory overload of her new existence. She could smell individual flowers in gardens 100 yards away. She could hear whispered conversations across the courtyard, and she could feel, always feel, the golden warmth of Kaelin's presence in her soul. Small fingers slipped into hers. "You came back," Ren said, looking up at her with shining eyes. "I knew you would." Saren knelt down, gathering the child into her arms. "I couldn't stay away. I had someone very important waiting for me." "Me? You." She pressed a kiss to Ren's dark hair. "And your father. And a whole family I didn't know I needed until I found them." Ren hugged her tightly, then pulled back with sudden seriousness. "Are you going to be my new mama?" Saren's heart clenched. "Would you like that?" "Very much." Ren's small face broke into a smile. "Papa would too, but he's too scared to ask." "Is he now?" "He thinks you might not want to stay, because he bit you without asking, and almost got you killed." Saren glanced up to find Kaelin standing a few feet away, his expression caught between hope and terror. The most powerful alpha in 3 generations, ruler of the Thornwood territories, brought to his knees by the fear of a single woman's rejection. "Well," Saren said, rising to her feet while keeping hold of Ren's hand. "Perhaps I should put him out of his misery." She crossed to where Kaelin stood, Ren trailing behind her. The music and laughter faded as the pack sensed something significant about to happen. "Saren," Kaelin began, his voice rough. "I need you to know that you're not obligated. Stop talking." His mouth snapped shut. Saren reached up and touched the claiming mark on her shoulder, the bite that had bound them together, that had nearly killed her, that had ultimately saved her life. "You gave me this without asking," she said. "You changed everything I was, everything I thought I wanted, in a single moment of instinct." Pain flickered across his face. "I know, and I will spend." I said stop talking. She stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "You changed everything, and I have never been more grateful for anything in my life." His breath caught. "I was surviving before I met you," Saren continued. "Hiding what I was, afraid of what I could do, alone in ways I had stopped noticing. You and your daughter pulled me into a world I didn't know existed. A world where I finally belong." "Saren, but the bond isn't complete." She tilted her head, baring the unmarked side of her neck. "You claimed me. Now I claim you." Understanding flooded his eyes, followed by something that looked like reverence. "Are you certain?" he whispered. "I have never been more certain of anything." Kaelin's hands trembled as they cupped her face. "Then claim me, my heart. Make me yours, as I have made you mine." Saren felt her wolf rise within her, golden eyes blazing behind her human gaze. She leaned up, her lips brushing the place where his neck met his shoulder. She could feel his pulse thundering beneath his skin, could smell the cedar and pine, and something uniquely him. "Mine," she growled, and bit down. His taste flooded her mouth, power and passion and a love so vast it made her soul sing. The bond between them blazed like a supernova, 2 golden threads weaving together into something unbreakable. She felt everything. His past, his pain, his loneliness, his desperate hope. She felt the moment he had first seen her in the market, the moment his wolf had recognized her across a crowded square. She felt his anguish when he realized what his bite had done, his determination when he came to rescue her, his overwhelming joy as she claimed him in return. And beneath it all, she felt home. When she finally released him, they were both trembling. The pack around them had gone silent, witnessing something sacred, something that happened perhaps once in a generation. "It is done," Brenna announced, her ancient voice carrying across the courtyard. "The bond is complete. The Alpha King has found his true mate." The howls that rose into the night sky shook the very stones of Thornwood Keep. Wolves threw back their heads and sang to the moon, celebrating a union that would be remembered for centuries. But Saren barely heard them. She was looking at Kaelin, at the tears streaming down his weathered face, at the smile that transformed him from fearsome alpha to the man she loved. "Hello, my heart," she said softly. "Hello, my love." He pulled her close, one arm around her waist, the other reaching out to draw Ren into their embrace. "Welcome home." Saren looked at the man holding her, at the child pressed against her side, at the pack that had become her family. She thought of the frightened girl she had been, hiding her gift, convinced she would never truly belong anywhere. And she smiled. "I am home," she said. Finally, completely, irrevocably home. Above them, the full moon blazed silver in the endless sky, blessing the Alpha King and his impossible mate with light that would never fade. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. A big thank you to everyone who's following. Your support truly means the world to me.